So hello to all participants and dear colleagues and some students are here, I guess. And first of all, I want to thank to the organizers, to Karima and Peter, that you organized this very interesting conference on smart city issues, and to invite me to have the chance to talk about our ideas of smart cities. And in the special case, I want to talk about methodologies in the integrative smart city research, where I want to elaborate that there is a methodological gap, what we can detect, and hopefully this becomes clear at the end of my presentation. I haven't to go into this discussion why we are discussing smart cities. This has a lot to do with this business-driven understanding how to make a city to a digital twin city. This means to put sensors, to measure in a new way, to compute data, and to communicate in different, very modern ways in real time. So, however, there are two questions what we are dealing with, and I want to focus in this presentation is how do technologies and digitization influence the urban development, respectively they're influencing decision making. On the other, and this has to do with the idea of a changing type of intelligence. And the second question is how can we understand the city? There is no final answer for sure, but we know even from the discussion in regional science or in the social science in a broader context that we do have very different understandings. And again, this is reflected in many approaches which we are discussing in this field of smart city development. So I would like to focus on this question, what is missing for an integrative methodological frame. And doing that, I will start to discuss the different understandings of smart city, to give you some idea what I mean by these different understandings, and then to come to a suggestion which methodological frame should be used and discussed in order to overcome this gap, as I will show you. The definitions we know from the smart city discussion are very wide. It started relatively early, not only in the 2000s, but looking at such definitions, first definitions have been rather simple, focusing on technology and to indicate that it has to be related to certain issues, for instance, environmental issues or competitiveness of cities, and so on. There was a definition done by the DG Internal Policies, which is emphasizing the stakeholder approach. So it's a completely different approach. And just now we have this new publication by Chiara Del Po and Andrea Caraglio, which came out early this year, saying and coming back to his former definition, they see it as a synergetic process of urban development, and then it comes what is the role and importance of ICTs and standard technologies combined with human and social capital. So again, this is a list of potential factors influencing that. In the same publication, Komninos says that there is no common understanding, in particular because it is a more transdisciplinary issue how to implement technology in the cities, but there is still no common understanding between the public boards, scientists, enterprises, and the society, and thus one reason why it is discussed so intensively. And looking at the literature, we have very fragmented literature on that issue. I would like to start, on the background of that, I would like to start my argumentation with the simple figure which was developed by Michael Betty in 2011, where he indicates where he is saying, and the group, it was not him alone, saying that we have a new situation regarding the availability of data, because we are modeling since many decades in the meantime. But now we have access to new form of data, which comes from sensors, and which comes from social media, and which can be used and integrated into big data sets. So, and this gives us in research new possibilities to develop models which try to improve the efficiency of systems, of urban systems. But he does not say what kind of city and value creation is done in such approaches. So I will come back to this idea of value creation. And there is a second publication by Michael Betty where he emphasizes that there is a major distinction between the digital technologies being used for the short-term, the routine management, and for those technologies which are used for long-term strategic planning. So this is rather important because it has an impact on the data we are using and the quality of the data we are using and the information, and thus the knowledge we can produce out of this information. So this I will show you later on. I like very much in this context of discussion of smart city this figure which was done by Nam and Pardo some years ago. On the one hand side, saying what kind of city we are discussing. This is more the policy and the societal aspect. On the one hand side, and at the same time they are grouping most relevant factors which are influencing or which are behind this idea of a digital city or of a wired city on the one hand side, on the other side of smart growth, which is more prominent in the US, or on the creative city, which we know from other authors and other concepts. From my point of view, and this is experience, it's not a really bibliographic analysis I have done, but in many discussions and publications and projects, we can see that we have on the one hand side the understanding of the smart city as a data-driven city, where this idea of technology is very prominent. And on the other side, we have the citizen-centered approaches, which do not see the technology in the first range, but they start on the question, what do we need in a city? And this comes out from a place-based understanding how cities should develop. To describe this very briefly, this ICT and data-driven understanding, you know these different concepts and definitions to optimize decision-making and to manage and control urban systems. A very prominent and failed approach was done by Cisco for the city in collaboration with the city of Barcelona, where they developed a concept for the full digitization of the city, of all elements and aspects and relations, which was done and which was finally described in this Internet of Everything, related to 12 different urban key elements and providing 22 different programs with corresponding urban services at the end. However, it is, in my experience, a very comprehensive concept which was developed. It was not implemented. This has other reasons. But working in that way means that you need comprehensive sensoring and digitization, and you have to develop the corresponding decision rules and algorithms related to key performance indicators. Coming back to Betty's picture, we can say that it is not the data is not only additional data what we have, but if we understand it in a more technical way, it comes out that these algorithms become crucial, and many cities are working on that in order to improve the efficiency of, for instance, of transport systems, or in the health sector, or in any other sector where services can be optimized. But this needs a data-driven governance, and this is, from the policy point of view, it is a technology-centered point of view, and in a planning perspective, and I'm coming from a planning faculty in Vienna, it is mostly done in a top-down way. So this means the value creation of these approaches means that we have digital twin cities, which enabling automated form of real-time decision-making, the modeling, scenario building, and the Internet of Everything can be connected to user-generated information and content analysis. So this needs a data-centered governance, as I already told you. In my center, which is a small one in the Department of Planning, just now I'm heading one PhD, which is focusing on the GeoWeb at the production of place, which is based on this idea of a good child, the world of volunteered geography. So what is he doing in this PhD work? He starts from this assumption that there is user-generated digital city which is reproducing our urban world in all its functions and relations, or cultural and social artifacts. Yeah? And his final research questions are: which forms and functions and hierarchies are existing in the digital twin city? And do these digital artifacts deliver new polycentric structures? Everyone is using the information and the knowledge which is provided by web pages. And thus the question is, how is this an uneven geography what is produced if we use that? Because we have, from former studies and in our planning concepts, we have a certain idea how a metropolitan structure has evolved and is evolving recently. So he's working on that. He is using this an open data concept because he is analyzing all IPs in a certain region and doing a text analysis, extracting most relevant text and vectorizing this text in order to identify what kind of information is provided in this in the different web pages and information which is georeferenced in these cities. So to show you, this is an interim result. He is just now in the phase of the empirical studies. To show you, he did first analysis where he analyzed all georeferenced information in the Randstad. He's analyzing this information which is provided on the one hand side in English language and in German language. So you easily can see that what is produced in the digital description of the Randstad is something like an uneven geography. And he will go on, and after finishing this process of this learning algorithm, he will analyze certain other contents related to the description of urban structures or polycentric structures, what we can expect for the Randstad as such. So one aspect, and we did other studies in that field, tracing the patterns of bikers in cities, etc. We are involved in several programs where we follow this data-driven approach. On the other side, we can identify this learning, this smart city, citizen-centered approach, where the learning process is predominant. In this, we can assume the city as an actor in a very competitive environment due to different influencing factors, and with a city which is challenged by different issues. And so in that sense, understanding the city as a learning system, we regard the city as, in this learning process, as an interaction between digital information, which can be done communicated in a very easy way. We started with very simple spider diagrams describing cities in its different dimensions, and doing workshops, inviting stakeholders of cities so that a more strategic discussion was enabled and is enabled. So in this case, as a place-based citizen-centered evidence, we need this integration of quantitative information and the stakeholders and the citizen knowledge. It depends whether you're working on the urban level or if you're working as a planner on the local level. You have to install more participatory approaches involving the citizens of a neighborhood. Again, coming back to this picture of Michael Betti, in that case, it is, of course, you can use certain information which you can extract from social media, but it's not only necessary. What you have to do is to integrate people, stakeholders on the corresponding level into this learning process, and on the other side you have to bring in this knowledge which can be produced from the digital twin city. And in that case, it is, for me, it is this learning process needs predominantly a multi-level governance approach. And it is now, I guess, and this is one of my ideas to relate it more to this idea of open innovation strategy, which means the integration of different information sources. So the value creation here is part of a wider ecosystem, which enables the integration of digital knowledge and the citizens' creative knowledge and contribution, the reaction on digital knowledge. And of course, the evaluation of projects and strategies is based on modeling and the participating stakeholders, actors, whoever you need them. So a completely different step forward to come in this type of knowledge production. Again, in this field, we did several projects. We started with a very simple indicator-based data-driven project in 2007, European Smart Cities, a well-known web page. We did policy advice in different cities, including nets of stakeholders in different cities, mostly in medium-sized cities, not so much in very big cities. Yeah. Krakow was the largest one in that case. And what we have done just now is the work on the neighborhood level, where we developed a web-based tool, which is something like a dashboard, in order to answer this last question, how to support transformation processes towards a more resilient energetic conditions. This is a complex situation, because local citizens have very different interests, different capacities, etc. So we tried to work out how could this transition process towards more energy efficient development could be supported by digital information and decision tools. So it was a participatory approach. It was, on the one hand side, it is a GIS-based modeling of the energy consumption of each building, which is which is done on the very local level for any building in this neighborhood. And it is on the other side a web-based instrument what we developed, most of all for the communication of complex contents, which have to be discussed. What should be the future of a neighborhood in energetic terms? Yeah, here are some details. So we identified with stakeholders what are most relevant information which should be given on the local level, and on the one hand side, and on the other side for such neighborhoods, we can calculate or model the energy consumption for each building, depending on its quality, on its recent quality, and simulating the assumed or the modeled energy demand if there is done a specific type of energy thermal rehabilitation. And this we use as a communicative tool in the process how to bring forward this transformation process in the neighborhood. So coming back to this idea of methodologies, I would like to propose two dimensions as the most relevant dimensions. The one is the type of intelligence, which is discussed in many papers in the meantime. We can observe due to not to technological development on the one hand side, and the use of, and there are other papers on artificial intelligence and other forms how to deal with, to develop more sophisticated algorithm. This means this development from a simple data-driven approach more towards this collective understanding and this collective intelligence. On the other side, and for planners, most of all, it is very important to understand that technology is embedded in a socio-technical context. So we have to understand the city on the one hand side from the social side and on the other side from the technical side. And this is a big discussion, we know. Sometimes we are not talking to scientists who come from completely the other side, not a data-driven and a data-centered understanding, so that it is a wide range of methods and discussions we can observe. Yeah? However, as I showed you, we are working on the one hand side with this idea of augmented realities, but because we have to acknowledge that we are producing with our digital world, we are producing uneven geographies. This is a user-driven description of the digital world. And this is a big research field from my point of view, which probably has to be enforced not only by planners, but by many data scientists as such, and most of all by geographers, because we have an idea what the city is and what urban development is, and we should know what is the digital version of that in the meantime. On the other side, we are working in planning. The citizen-centered approach has become very prominent. This is my before last picture here. We will come to this citizen-centered understanding of the smart city, and I see here good possibilities to connect the digital city and the collective knowledge with the idea of the open innovation, which has to be transferred to the local level, on the urban level or on the local level, to places at any level. However, many questions are arising in this idea, because coming to my last picture, we have on the one hand side this changing role of technology, which means from ICT and data-driven to this collective form. We know this development of, on the technical side, that we have the Internet of Things, the Internet of Services, and the Internet of Persons in the meantime. I'm part of this Internet of Persons now, which was offered here at the entrance. But we always should not forget that we have to integrate it into the urban arena. And this means, how can this be connected to the citizens? How can this be integrated into social issues and social and political processes, finally? And on the other side, we have, and this is my last saying, we have this different ontology of the city. We have it in this systemic view, where we see these different subsystems, which leads us to the question of complexity and complexity analysis. At our university of technology in Vienna, we have a complexity center of informatic sciences who are working on this modeling of different subsystems in order to bring in the different problems of different speed and different levels of interaction in such systems. But on the other side, we have this idea that the city is more than a systemic approach. It is the outcome of power relations and networks and decisions which have been done based on actual knowledge. And now the question is, how can we integrate in a better way than we are doing up to now? How can we integrate this collective knowledge produced by a good algorithm with the interests and with the interests and on the background of economic and political conditions of our cities. Okay, thank you for your attention.